In a tweet with over 5,000 likes, VA Laura Post says you may or may not have noticed that there is a cool new TOG game coming out, and you may or may not have noticed that the cast, full of totally awesome people who have our blessing, is different from the anime. Would you like to know why? Well, story time, 1 out of question mark. She goes on to say, first things first. As you may have noticed in the first post, all the actors involved are great people. So many people have reached out to the original cast when the auditions went out, and every single one has the original cast blessing. Support them, cheer them on. The English production team, studio director, also great. So then you may wonder who is responsible for this situation. Well, friends, they go by the name of Crunchyroll. Shocked Pikachu. Yes, you see, when the client making the game approached a studio to begin recording the English localization, Crunchyroll went directly to the client and told them they own the voice prints of the original cast. They do not. They went on to say that the video game client could legally not use any of the cast in the game in any capacity, not even as new characters or different characters than we originally played. We could not even audition for new or different characters. We were blacklisted. What Crunchyroll said is completely 100% untrue. Not only did I personally review my contracts to be sure that there was no such clause, some jobs do actually have clauses where you can't perform a character outside of official capacity. It's why I don't do voice requests. In addition, I also had multiple lawyers, in caps, look over the contract, and they agreed. There's nothing in there to stop us from being part of the project at the very least, as new or different characters. Crunchyroll was completely out of line, not just ethically, like come on, your actors need to pay rent, but also legally. They have no ground to stand on to prohibit us from playing different or new characters, and any ground they have to prevent us from reprising is weak at best. Okay, let's pause there for a moment because this is crazy. So apparently Crunchyroll went to this other client, said that they can't hire these VAs because Crunchyroll owns the voice print, which Laura Post is claiming as a lie, and then basically stopped them from getting involved with this business, this next contract, right? Which sounds like tortious interference potentially. And she even says that a bunch of lawyers looked this over, multiple lawyers looked over the contract, and they agreed that Crunchyroll's basically out of line here. So it seems like pretty strong grounds to sue Crunchyroll, but she's not going to do that. There's actually a response to that right here, where this person, Stephanie, says, for those suggesting the actors should sue, the legal fee would have cost far more than they made on the game, and there is the fear of getting blacklisted by the company. Laura is being very brave to speak out. Laura then says not to mention the time involved in lawsuit of this scale either. Another thing I and other working actors don't have much of, unfortunately, Couple things with this, though. Generally, if you win a lawsuit, you have a high likelihood of the judge awarding you your attorney's fees. So there's that. Getting blacklisted by the company, at this point, why would she even want to work with Crunchyroll anymore? Like, according to her, Crunchyroll went out of their way to damage her life and the lives of other VAs. So why the heck would you still want to work with them? Doesn't matter how dominant Crunchyroll is in the VA scene. Sometimes you got to do the right thing, man. It's not always just about money, money, money. Sometimes you got to stand up for yourself and for other people. And then, like, her saying she doesn't have the time for that. I mean, I'm not trying to be rude, but there are certainly people who are busier than these VAs are who have gotten through lawsuits, sometimes multiple lawsuits at once. So I don't know about all that. Okay, we left off here. Crunchyroll was completely out of line, not just ethically, like, come on, your actors need to pay rent, but also legally. They have no ground to stand on to prohibit us from playing different or new characters, and any ground they have to prevent us from reprising is weak at best. But the damage was done. The client was too scared to get involved in an overseas legal battle, so they would not entertain the idea of including any original cast members in their game. Let's pause for a moment just to clarify that, because I don't think there is a legal battle right now. I think this is probably just the Twitter limit, making her phrasing a little off. It would be like a potential legal battle, I think is what she means. But again, that's not her fault. There's like a limit on how much you can put in a tweet. Continuing. They thankfully decided to do their own thing and not try to voice match us. Moral of the story, we already knew Crunchyroll was not actor friendly, but in my opinion, this was a whole new level. They obviously have no problem going to potential future clients without your knowledge and robbing you as an actor of the opportunity to even audition for work. Like I said, this is crazy stuff. Like, if this is accurate, Crunchyroll, to my assessment, went out of their way to damage the lives of these people, like financially, which, therefore can affect pretty much every outlet of your life. She says, personally, I will not be working with Crunchyroll on any future projects without the protection of a union contract. I strongly encourage other actors thinking with working with Crunchyroll in the future to consider that as well. I've seen a few people ask reasonably, why would Crunchyroll do this? And I realized I didn't make it clear. The game is union. And, well, we all know how Crunchyroll feels about the union. So, yeah, if all that is true, I think it's pretty insane what Crunchyroll did to these people. I don't like Crunchyroll for a number of reasons, and this will just go on my list of reasons. However, I'm also not too sure this is being handled very well either. Because well, for example, take a look at this. Dude says, I can do to help. What can I do to help, basically? Laura Post says, honestly, not much. This thread was more to warn actors about this kind of behavior than to really do anything about it. And all throughout the responses to her thread, you can see people are very upset about this whole situation, which is completely understandable. I just don't think it's a great thing for her to come out with all this information, and apparently other VAs, maybe they knew she was going to make this tweet and all that. You know, it's highly likely that she talked to some other VAs about this before she tweeted about it, given what's all going on. But none of them want to actually sue Crunchyroll. They're all, despite the fact that Crunchyroll apparently went out of their way to damage their lives, they're still willing to work with Crunchyroll if there's a union involved, which just makes it sound like this all comes down to money and not actually about making the industry better for everyone and stamping out corruption. Speaking of corruption, that's another concern. If they want a union, well, who's going to be the union delegates? Who's going to be the people at the top? Very likely it's people who don't actually like anime, don't like anime fans, and they're only in it for the money. So now we'd have to deal with corrupt Crunchyroll and corrupt union. Not a good thing. And let me be clear here too. I'm not just demonizing money. It's obviously important for things to work. And actually, that's a part of the larger issue here too. Because if we're talking about the anime industry and people who deserve to get paid more, sorry VAs, but you're not at the front of that list. Let's talk about the animators first. Animators who are notoriously overworked and underpaid. Excuse me. We could also talk about mangakas who at least seem to get paid a bit better, provided they're successful. But my gosh, are they overworked? You could still argue even the very successful mangakas aren't getting paid enough for the amount of work that they do and how much it damages their health. Let me be clear here too, because some of this stuff is a bit unrelated to Laura's post directly, but it is indirectly tied into it, because this is, what I'm speaking about is a part of a larger issue in the VA community that VAs have brought to the table before, specifically regarding why they want a union. And rhetoric such as, oh, we don't get paid even a living wage, has been such rhetoric to try and justify unionizing. However, it's become pretty apparent as more information became public that VAs claiming such things were pretty much misleading people. Because they weren't basing that off what they were paid for the work, they were basing that off not working enough throughout the year. For example, Helena Taylor, in the Bayonetta situation from about 7 months ago, where she was complaining about the amount of money she was offered, saying it was like not even a living wage. But then it came out that like she was only really going to do about 2 weeks or so worth of work. Well, obviously you're not going to get paid 52 weeks of work for a mere 2 weeks worth of line recording as a VA that you probably recorded from home. On top of that, she was also, according to my recollection, lying about the amount of money she was offered for that minimal work. It's a big role, don't get me wrong, but there's not that many lines in the game, is the point. And what they were willing to pay her was apparently very, very good. And she lied about that to the public, saying it was much, much worse. So I'm very skeptical of when VAs talk about how much money they make, because often they're blurring the lines of truth and they're trying to manipulate anime fans into fighting a battle on their behalf where they can make as much money for being as lazy as possible, which is really dishonest. I can break that down further too. So don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say that VAs are all, doing really well and they're all making a bunch of money from the VA work, because that's not the case either. On average, VAs are not making great money. It can be a bit tough at times, for sure. And that's why a lot of VAs will rely on convention appearances to make a lot of their money. Maybe they get paid from the convention to show up, maybe not, but a lot of VAs also make pretty good money back when they get their merch and signings and things like that at conventions. So very important to hustle if you're a VA. A lot of VAs are now also into streaming. And we all know streaming can be great work, so you combine all that stuff and you could be doing pretty well. But the caveat is you got to put in the work. Some of these VAs want to put in the most minimal amount of work possible, like maybe work 1 month out of the year or so, give or take, maybe a week here or there, another 2 weeks here or there or so. And then they want to get paid like a full year's worth of work when they don't actually deserve that because they didn't put that work in. Some of the worst examples of this are the VAs that hate anime and hate anime fans and hate the anime industry and only ended up in that line of work because what they really wanted to do was become some like big shot Hollywood actor or actress, and they failed at that and ended up trickling down into VA work for games and anime. And so they obviously don't do too well because they don't like any of this stuff. They don't like doing the voice acting work. They just force themselves to do it. Look, they should probably go in a different line of work. I agree. I don't get it either, but this is just a fact of the situation. There are some VAs who are like this. And then because they don't like the community and the fans, they also don't do very many convention appearances, or the ones they do don't have very many people showing up because fans can kind of see like, oh, this person's just kind of weird. You know, they don't vibe with them. And for good reason. Again, these are people that just hate the entire industry. They hate the fans and stuff. But then those people will turn around and play victim and be like, oh, it's so difficult. I'm not getting paid enough money. And it's like, yeah, you're not getting paid enough money because you're barely working and you're not hustling and you hate this whole thing. But now you want us to support you and say that you deserve to get paid more? Yeah, what do I got? Stupid stamped on my forehead? Nice try. And I guess it's pretty much that. So ultimately, like I said, a lot of that is a part of a larger issue in the VA scene that is not directly tied to Laura. So I'm not blaming all that on her. You know, it's just unfortunate because I'll give her credit. She was trying to put in more work. Like, she wanted more work. She wanted to work on this game. I respect it, Laura. I'm glad you were trying to get more work and all that. What frustrates me is that she was wronged so much by the corpos, and she has all these fans supporting her, but then she's like, I'm not going to do anything about it. Even when lawyers are apparently lined up already looking this over and agreeing that Crunchyroll's in the wrong, she's still willing to not do anything about it, and even further, still willing to work with Crunchyroll provided there's a union involved. And as I said earlier in the video, I'm not confident that a union involved in this sort of situation would be a good one. I lean more towards believing that union would probably end up filled with corrupt people who don't even like anime and are only in it for the money. And that's not going to help. It's just going to make things worse. On a final note about that, by the way, you don't need a union to have worker solidarity. Every single VA that was just wronged by Crunchyroll, y'all could literally you could flip the script. They could literally say, hey, you know what, Crunchyroll? We're blacklisting you now. Yeah, we got like a dozen VAs here. We're all blacklisting you. None of us want to work with your company. And that sort of thing might spread. More VAs might then turn around and be like, yeah, we're going to stand with those workers. We're not going to support Crunchyroll either. We're not going to ever accept work from them. Like, you can literally do this stuff on your own without a union. Not always the easiest approach, though, and so people don't really want to take it. Easier to tweet about things, right? And then hope that a union gets made and that the union is going to solve all your problems, right? Wishful thinking. Not a good approach. I'll leave it there, guys. Thank you for tuning in. Let me know what you think about all this in the comments. You don't got to agree with me. Yeah, it's just my thoughts on this real quick. So all in there. Thank you for tuning in once again. Look forward to catching you in the comments and in the next segment.